"Don't touch her plate!" the head butler shouted, his voice slicing through the silence of the grand dining hall. But the new maid didn't stop. Her trembling hand placed a small piece of bread in front of the pale little girl sitting alone at the end of the table. Everyone gasped. And then, for the first time in 2 weeks, the millionaire's daughter reached out and smiled. The mansion was a world of glass, marble, and silence. It sat at the edge of the city like a sleeping beast, beautiful, lifeless, and cold. Inside, servants moved quietly, their steps muffled by thick carpets. The rules were strict, the air heavy with invisible pressure. At the heart of it all was Mr. Adrian Langford, a powerful businessman whose wealth could buy anything except his daughter's health. Little Clara, just 2 years old, hadn't eaten a proper meal in 14 days. Doctors came and went. Nutritionists gave up. Even the most expensive specialists shrugged helplessly. Every time someone tried to feed her, she turned her head away and whimpered softly, as if afraid of the food itself. And so, in that house of wealth, a child was starving in silence. The new maid, Elena, arrived quietly on a rainy morning. She had no references, no polished manners, just a kind face and eyes that carried more compassion than confidence. Her uniform was a little too big, her shoes worn from the long walk to the mansion. The other staff whispered. "She won't last a week," said the head butler. "She's too soft," said the cook. "She doesn't know this house," said the nanny. But Elena wasn't here for a paycheck. She needed this job. Her younger brother was in the hospital and every dollar counted. On her first day, she noticed the silence around Clara. The little girl sat at the table, toys untouched, eyes distant. Her once rosy cheeks were pale, her tiny hands too thin. When Elena offered to help, the nanny snapped, "Don't go near her. She doesn't eat. And she doesn't like strangers." But that night, Elena couldn't sleep. The thought of that hungry child haunted her. So she did something no one else had done in weeks. She decided to try anyway. The next morning, when the mansion was still quiet, Elena entered the kitchen and baked something simple. A small piece of soft bread. It wasn't fancy. No cream, no garnish, no imported ingredients. Just flour, warmth, and love. When she brought it to the dining hall, the staff froze. "Don't even think about it," the butler warned. "Mr. Langford will fire you for disobeying orders." But Elena ignored him. She walked to the little girl, knelt down, and smiled. "Good morning, Clara. I made this for you. It's warm, like a hug." For a moment, nothing happened. Then Clara blinked. Slowly, she reached for the bread and took a tiny bite. Tears filled Elena's eyes. The butler gasped. Someone dropped a tray. And from the doorway, a deep voice thundered, "You fed her bread?" Mr. Langford stood there, disbelief etched across his face. He strode forward, his expensive shoes echoing across the marble floor. "Who told you you could feed her that?" he demanded. Elena's voice trembled, but she held her ground. "No one, sir. But she was hungry. You think we haven't tried everything?" His voice cracked with frustration. "We've had chefs from Paris, doctors from Zurich, therapists from London, and you think bread will fix her?" Elena looked at the little girl, who was now nibbling happily. "Maybe she didn't need a doctor, sir," she whispered. "Maybe she just needed someone who wasn't afraid to sit beside her." For the first time, Mr. Langford was speechless. His anger softened into something else. Confusion, maybe even guilt. He turned away, muttering, "You don't understand," and left the room. But Elena did understand. More than he knew. That evening, as the mansion settled into silence, Mr. Langford called Elena into his study. He sat behind a massive oak desk, his face buried in his hands. "You don't know what you've done," he said quietly. Then his voice broke. "My wife died giving birth to Clara. I promised I'd keep her safe. But she started refusing food soon after the funeral. I thought it was trauma, or maybe punishment for me." Elena's eyes softened. "Sir," she said gently, "grief doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes it hides in silence or an empty plate." Mr. Langford looked up, his eyes wet. "How did you know what to do?" Elena smiled faintly. "My mother passed when I was 10. I stopped eating too. My brother was the one who sat with me every morning. baking simple bread until I smiled again. For a moment, the powerful man and the humble maid sat in silence. Two souls from different worlds, bound by the same ache. Days passed. Clara began to eat again, little by little. Not fancy food, but Elena's warm, homemade meals. Laughter returned to the mansion. The walls, once heavy with grief, echoed with the sound of a child's giggle. Mr. Langford started joining them for breakfast. Sometimes he'd even roll up his sleeves and help Elena knead dough. The staff couldn't believe their eyes. Their strict employer smiling, laughing, even learning. One morning, as sunlight poured through the tall windows, Clara toddled over to Elena and whispered, "Mama." Everyone froze. Mr. Langford's eyes filled with tears. He knelt beside Clara and said softly, "She's not your mama, sweetheart, but she's the reason we have hope again." Elena smiled through her tears. "I'm just someone who remembered what kindness tastes like." Months later, the mansion looked different. Not because of renovations or wealth, but because it finally felt alive. Mr. Langford made Elena the head caretaker of the house, and more importantly, part of their family. Sometimes the smallest act of courage, like offering a piece of bread, can heal what even money cannot. Because sometimes the people we underestimate the most carry the power to do what no one else dares. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes in kindness. Sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest truths.